Welcome to the Irish Pagan School podcast. Your hosts are authors and co-founders of the Irish Pagan School here in County Waterford, Ireland, Laura O'Brien and John O'Sullivan. Fáilte.
Do you ever feel like you're a bad pagan? Well, dag to you, agus fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome to John O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School here. And yeah, sometimes I feel like I'm a bad pagan. But well, okay, so what I mean by that is bad at paganism or bad at expressing my lived spirituality, which falls under the definition of paganism. So yeah, now when I'm saying bad, I'm not talking about bad as in manipulative or like evil or like malintent or anything like that at all. I'm just like referring to probably not being as consistent with my practices as I really should. Probably not kind of engaging with the notable kind of shifts in the seasons and the cycles to the degree that I possibly should. And so, yeah, it's something that I wanted to share, to be honest, because at the Irish Pagan School, we kind of educate people in the kind of core values and the core expressions of paganism from a standpoint of Irish mythology and culture and folklore. There is no existing kind of tradition. There is no kind of hidden, secret, surviving thing Ireland was colonized the fuck out of in every single fucking way. And all we have left is the really old stories, the old manuscripts, and then the lived landscape of the island itself. So let's not underestimate that. But eh, it's tricky. It is difficult to kind of sometimes make sure that you're engaging in your spiritual practices because we're human. There's so many other pressures, so many other kind of mental pressures, like emotional pressures, physical pressures on us day to day, so many other kind of obligations that the one that we're most likely to let slip is our spiritual path, is our spiritual expression of ourself. Because it's not something that is core for many people, or it's something that is put aside for them for the betterment of getting up and doing the job, or getting up and kind of taking care of the work, or getting up and taking care of like the emotional needs of others. And so, we let ourselves slip. But the odd and weird thing is the practice of our spiritual expression of our existence is one of the more fulfilling things for us as an individual. Being able to engage in our spirituality, being able to engage in those senses of comfortable sense of self, or a meditation practice, or time in nature, all of these things are part of paganism. Like when we talk, okay, so when we talk about paganism, just to revisit that definition, it's not one particular spiritual path. There is no one true way of paganism. Paganism is an umbrella term for a number of different spiritual pathways or religious practices or spiritual kind of vocations that conform to four kind of main definitions or pillars that are seen throughout those practices. And the reason why it's called pagan as an umbrella term is because it's not one of the other big five religions in the world, which is, hopefully I get this right, it's Judaism, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, and Buddhism. Those are the big five. And so if you're not one of those and you have a reverence for nature, you have some practice of introspection and moments of self-care, if you believe in the existence of other deities and like, polytheism, then you're following a pagan path. Whatever other kind of aspects or expressions or practices you have that go along with your spiritual performance, your spirit, not performance, your spiritual pursuits, you're following a pagan path. So when we look at those kind of four key tenets from an Irish perspective, like we look at our mythology and our folklore and our folk traditions, like we've just passed Bealtaine here, which is one of the four big seasonal fire festivals and acknowledges the kind of arrival of the warmer months, the energetic months of summer. And, I have a small practice I do here, but I don't really go big and I don't really kind of make a big thing out of everything. And then sometimes I feel like I'm not doing enough for my spirituality. Sometimes I feel like a bad pagan. A lunar cycle goes past, be it a full moon or a dark moon, and I don't acknowledge it or don't do something with that. Or, I take a small road to do a small kind of modest acknowledgement of it without getting into an actual full practice or a engagement with a community in regards to a ritual or anything like that at all. Um, so sometimes I don't feel like I'm enough for my paganism. But at other times I realize that I'm actually more than enough for me and my comfort in my own expressions of spirituality. But it seems I'm enough for other people who come and talk to me and kind of learn from the Irish Pagan School and the classes that we have here. And I think at the end of the day, regardless of my guilt about engagement in my own personal practices or what I am or amn't doing, it's about letting go of expectation and being invested in the process. And so, like, I started making a coffee for the Dagda. Okay, so the reason where that comes from, the god I follow is the Dagda, ancient god of Ireland. He's the good god. And one of the last interactions we have with the arrival of the Milesians at the end of the end of the mythological era, really, or mythological cycle of stories, Ireland becomes a wasteland and it's not abundant, it's not green anymore, and it is about the unjust domination or conquest of the Milesians. And the way they rectify that is by making friends with the Dagda. And in order to do that, they give the first grain and the first kind of milk from the cattle to the Dagda. That's the offering. And so from there, Ireland's abundance is restored. And so to honor that, whenever I open a new bottle of cream, I pour the first cream out of that bottle for the Dagda. Now, initially I was a small little vessel. I got like a little kind of milk churn, a mini kind of milk churn, and I kind of would pour it into that. But then over time, I was then making cream for my coffees. And as I was engaging in the practice of first cream for the Dagda, I got the impression that he would enjoy a coffee too. So now I make coffees for the Dagda, but it still has that energetic intent of the first cream. And so it goes behind me in my altar space. It goes in, and I put it there whenever I'm making the coffees. Whenever I'm making a coffee for me, I invariably making a one for him. But always, definitely, if it's the first cream I pour from the pot. So it feels like it's a small thing. It feels like, oh well, that's just something small. Like that's just easy. Like that's, but uh, for living for living in paganism, for daily kind of practices, for engaging with one's spirituality on a daily basis, that's actually where the value is. But it's not about doing big things once a year or one thing when the moon comes around or like a season shifts. It's about living in your pagan practice on a daily basis, making it part of your lived existence and allowing for the fulfillment of your spiritual self as much as your physical self. We all grumble about it, like, it's, oh, fucking, I read, terrible, blah, blah, blah. But then you put your runners on, you go out for the fucking walk and you feel better about it. Or, you're not like, you're caught in your own head, you got all the distractions and, you then, okay, no, fuck it. I'm going to take 5 minutes and I'm going to do a small meditation and it just settles you. There are so many things that are part of our like spiritual practice, spiritual kind of growth and progress that are so, so good for us. But we tend to sacrifice those for the perceived benefit of other things. And it is about, at the end of the day, not being a bad pagan is engaging in your own spiritual practice in your own way. Now, again, I said bad pagan. That's the context. Like, so there are people who out there who weaponize their spirituality or who intentionally manipulate based on their spirituality. That's not what I mean by a bad pagan. They're just a shite or an asshole or a manipulator or um in many cases I pity them because they're misinformed. They've built their practice based on appropriated land or on, misinformation, which means that they have no depth to their practice. And so, for the most of those people out there, I feel sad. Like, and I probably, when I said bad pagan at the start of this, you may have thought of someone, you may have thought of some particular individual, and you're like, oh yeah, they're a fucking bad pagan. But in that case, it's less about their spirituality and more about how they choose to engage or how they choose to utilize that pagan, their expression of their spirituality, like cults of personality, or playing up to victim crowds or playing up to manipulating other people. I've come across some really fucking horrible people who just happen to be pagan. In the same way I've come across really fucking horrible people who are Christian or who are like any other spirituality in the world. So when I wanted to talk about this being a bad pagan, it is a bit more the guilt and shame I have about not engaging in my own spiritual practice on a regular basis. But talking about it means that it's normalizing the fact that we're not going to get it right every time. Even me, who works in this, like sharing and educating people on Irish spirituality, I don't get it fucking right every time. But I'm committed to the process of keep turning up, keep doing the next bit, give myself the grace and forgiveness for when I can't do it or when I don't do it, but allow for the fact that the past is gone. There's nothing we can do to change it. The future tomorrow doesn't actually exist. There's no way I can put energy on top of shifting and changing things there, but I can move my energy now in this moment. I can do something in the now, which can lead to a future, which can lead to a tomorrow that I want or that I'm pursuing. But I can't do anything about tomorrow. I can only do it about it today. And so when we feel like we're bad pagans, when we feel like we're not engaging in our spiritual life as we really should, accept that, yeah, okay, we make mistakes, we fail, we let ourselves down, but doesn't mean we can't choose to do better. Doesn't mean we can't choose to do more. So until next time, look after yourself. Take care. Agus slán. Goodbye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a positive review in your podcast listener. Then head over to irishpaganschool.com and enroll in one of our free or paid courses. Slán go fóill, and we will see you next time.